You've probably seen the emails this week, or you might have seen the announcement on Facebook, or you might have heard it on the radio, but everybody here that is in attendance this morning and all those that are in attendance on Christmas Eve are going to have the opportunity to give a special offering for a group of folks in town who were very unexpectedly unemployed. You've seen the news story. You know that the foundry closed about 10 days ago. People showed up to work and the doors were shuttered and they pretty much were sent on their way. They were offered a few things to tide them through to the end of the year. And when that happened, it started to bubble up in the congregations here in town. And this is a nice thing about this community is we talk to each other through just the conversations that the pastors were having, realizing that many of these folks in their congregations. We decided that we wanted to be able to do something. And so today, that something is going to be that you can put an offering in that offering plate that's going to go straight to those workers. You can write out your check to Lydia's House Ministries, which is another great thing that we've been able to do in this town to kind of collect the goodwill of all of the congregations in this community to have a mechanism to distribute goods and services from time to time. And it's a good thing that we're doing this, but it also really bums me out that we are. Why does it bum me out that when we have a crisis in our community or we have a crisis in our country that we come together and we have to do something that is really a B-level activity of this organization that we come to? Because being a service provider or being an organization of charitable good works or being an organization that just collects money and passes it through really isn't what we're about. That's not the goal of this organization. The goal of this organization ultimately is radical upheaval of the way our society is ordered, in the way that Mary sings this morning in this song. He has cast down the proud and the thoughts of their hearts, and he has raised up the lowly. Now, I'm not getting down on this offering. In fact, I hope that I've at least applied a little bit of guilt pressure to you all to participate in it. But I do want us to be aware that when we do acts of goodwill like this, they are interim acts only. They are not what we're meant to be doing in this world. And it's like this thing that if you've ever had a job where you feel like you've got a strategic plan, but you never get to it because there are little fires to be put out all of the time. I feel like that is what we do in this reactive and responsive charity that we seem to hand out as people who follow Jesus, instead of moving along with that strategic plan. Now, make no mistake about it, in the early church, in fact, we don't know very much about what they did when they came together in the early church. We pretend like we do, but we actually don't know what they did very much. But we do have the early stories that we find in the book of Acts. And in many of those stories, you know what we find out they're doing? They're doing offerings like we're going to do today. They find out that there's a famine in Jerusalem. So all the churches that Paul and Barnabas have planted have collections at them. And Paul and Barnabas travel there. And they pick up the monies that have been collected. And they take them to Jerusalem and distribute them. They find out that there are widows in their community that are not being taken care of. And so they find 7 capable persons to come in and help take care of those widows in their community. Barnabas, our own patron, as we hear about, if you come and hear me preach about him every June 13th, I got to always bring this up. Barnabas is known because he takes a plot of land and he sells it and he brings it to give it to the community so that there can be redistribution of that financial good so that people who are in want don't need to be in want anymore. So I'm not saying we don't do these things, but we have to understand that when we do them, they are interim acts. And that early church community knows this well. In fact, as you read through the New Testament, they do this because they are biding their time until Jesus comes back. They don't think that it's the be-all and the end-all of their organization just to do good works. They're just trying to make it to the next day so that they can find that Jesus has come back and he has created this world that Mary sings about in this song. And I think that when we give and when we collect and we do works that are good and kingdom worthy, we have to remember these are just activities for an in-between time. They are not what we are called to do ultimately. What we're called to do ultimately is to realize this world that Mary sings about, where the hungry are filled with good things to eat, and the rich are sent away empty. It's complete and utter upheaval and transformation of the way that we have ordered everything in our world around us. This is why in the Old Testament, and we've had some of these readings already this Advent. In fact, this reading where the mountains will be leveled and the plains will be brought up is another one of these readings about earthquakes. I mean, one mistake that we often make is that this image of the earthquake and this image of the fire and this image of the flood have something to do with actual activity instead of just the social reordering that comes with the kingdom. The most common physical event in every prophecy about the day of the Lord or the coming of Jesus, in fact, Jesus even said 2 weeks ago, there will be earthquakes. And if you're just looking for seismic activity in tectonic plates of this planet, you're looking the wrong place. The earthquakes that he is talking about, I truthfully believe, are the ones that cast down the rich from their thrones, and they bring the poor up. We are to be earthquake and fire and flood in the world around us. We are to be that upheaval and that tumult and that cleansing and that purifying. We're not just to be folks that feel bad when something bad happens in our community and do a good thing. Though we're to do those things in the meantime while we wait for Jesus to come. The mission of our church is not to make more good people in a bad world. It's not a numbers game where sometime we eventually outnumber all of the bad folks by making more good folks. Is that we make a world where there is no anxiety around whether you have a job or not, whether you can see the doctor or not, whether you can eat or not, whether you can sleep in a warm place or not. And we do little, sometimes pitiful efforts towards these things, but our real goal is to stand up and try to make a world where that is the norm and not the exception. So if you want to think about God as coming, you give. Because giving is something that we do while we wait. It is not something we do when Christ has arrived. Because if we do our work of being earthquake and fire and flood, of tumult and upheaval and cleansing and purifying, the world that is inaugurated by that baby that is in Mary's womb, that Elizabeth's baby in her womb leaps for joy just in the proximity of. He didn't come just to make us want to give more money to more charities. He came so we might stand up for laws and structures of society that make giving irrelevant. So we give today because we wait. But we also give today because we look for a day when we don't have to give any longer. Thanks be to God.